Hi everyone, this is Rosie, and today we're going to be sewing a small pouch with a continuous zipper. So let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the project. The pouch is approximately 7 inches wide by 5 inches high by 3 inches deep. And it's made with a continuous zipper. So if I open it up, you'll see that I have one end of the zipper here, and then the zipper teeth go completely around with no break at this end. The way you do that is you take a zipper and you pull it apart so that you have two separate pieces, and then you sew in one side of the zipper to the pouch. And by pulling it apart like that, you actually get two zippers to use in two projects. Now you can use this either with this little tail hanging out like this, or you can use it with the tail tucked inside. And here's the tail tucked inside, and either way the pouch opens nice and wide. Both of these pouches were made with Decovil Light, which is going to give you nice structure. I have another one here that I've made with fusible fleece. I used Pellon 987F, and that gives you a little bit more of a softer pouch. Let's go over the materials that you're going to need for the project and all the measurements. First off, I'm using 100% cotton quilting fabric for the entire project, and I'm fusing some of the pieces with woven fuse too. Now here's a little tip. When I cut out my pieces, I like to start out with a piece of fabric that's larger than what I actually need to cut. And then I'll fuse the woven fuse to my fabric before cutting, and this avoids any shrinkage that might occur during the fusing process. You're going to need a number 5 zipper. The zipper tape on here is 1 1/4 inches. We need to cut a zipper that's 26 inches long, but we're only using 1/2 of the zipper. So what you'll do is you'll cut your zipper to the 26 inches, and then you'll just pull it apart. So I just have a little sample here, and then you'll pull it apart into two pieces, and you'll only use one piece, and the other piece you can use on another project. You'll also need a zipper pull for your number 5 zipper. So again, your zipper, you're cutting 26 inches long. Now for the front and back pieces of the pouch, you're going to need to cut out two pieces that are 11 inches wide by 4 inches high. And again, I've pre-fused the interfacing to the fabric, and then I cut out the pieces afterwards. So this is already fused with the woven fuse too. Then you need a piece for your bottom that's 11 inches wide by 7 inches high, and it has been fused with the woven fuse too. You'll need a piece of lining that's 11 inches wide by 13 inches high, and this piece does not need to be fused, so it's just the fabric, just the cotton fabric. Then you'll need a zipper tab that's 2 1/2 inches wide by 3 inches long, and a piece of binding that's 21 inches long by 2 1/2 inches wide. And then I'm going to use a piece of Decovil Light. It needs to be 10 inches wide by 13 inches high. If you don't want to use Decovil Light or don't have it, you can use Pellon 987F as an alternative. The Decovil Light will give you a little bit more body and structure. The Pellon will make it a little bit softer. Now you'll need some sort of marking tool. I will be using a friction pen, and as always, you need to be very careful using these pens. While the ink will disappear with heat, it comes back with cold. I only use them in the videos for demonstration purposes. I'm using my favorite thread, which is the Gutermann Mara 70, and I'm also going to use some Wonder Clips. Other than that, you just need basic sewing supplies. We're going to start by sewing the front and back pieces of the pouch to the bottom section. Now one thing that I like to do that's helpful, and this is optional, you don't have to do it, is I like to mark my stitching lines on the pieces. So we're using 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll just quickly mark a line right here. Again, this is optional, but if you're at all worried about keeping a straight seam, this is very helpful. After you mark the lines, you're going to take the front pieces, the front and back pieces, and clip them to the bottom panel. After we get it all clipped into place, we're going to sew right along that line, that 1/2 inch seam allowance, with a stitch length of 2.5. Everything is clipped into place, and now we can go ahead and sew those seams. I'm sewing on a Juki DDL 8008. This is an industrial straight stitch machine, but you do not need to have an industrial machine to make this project. You can make this easily on a domestic. Now again, I'm doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll sew along that line with a stitch length of 2.5, and you want to back stitch at both ends. Now that we finished that seam, you want to go ahead and sew down the seam on the other side in exactly the same way. When you're done stitching those seams, go ahead and iron them open. So I've already ironed mine open off camera. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is take my ruler and mark a 1/2 inch seam allowance all along the length of both long sides. After I mark the lines, I'm just going to take that piece of Decoville and place it right in between those seam lines and fuse this in place. Now, whether you're using the Decoville or the fusible fleece or whatever other interfacing you choose, you want to do that. You want to fuse this down according to the manufacturer's instructions. And I'm going to do that off camera. The Decoville light has been fused into place, and now I want to take this piece and fold it in half because I want to find the center bottom here. When you do this, you want to make sure that these side seams are lined up perfectly. Make sure that your top edges are all even, that your side edges are even, and then you can go ahead and make a small clip in that center bottom. You want to stay well within that seam allowance when you do this. And then you'll go ahead and do the same exact thing on the other side. After making those little notches in the center bottom, we're going to take our ruler and mark a line right across the center bottom. You want the edge of the ruler to fall right at the tip of that V when you draw your line. And after drawing this line, we want to draw a line 1.5 inches up from the center on both sides of that line. Now take the piece where you drew the lines, and we want to fold back on each one of those lines, just like this, and press that fold in place. And I'm going to press this off camera. So you'll fold this line here, and then you'll fold back on this line here and press both in place. I have those folds pressed into place, and now I want to take this and I want to bring those two folded edges together, just like this. When you do, you want to make sure that your side seams are still lined up. One thing that's helpful to keep those edges together, because they can shift when you're sewing, is to just tack them in place with a few little hand stitches. So you'll go right through the seams on both sides, and then just do a few little hand tack stitches. And you can do this on both sides, and that'll keep those seams together nicely. I tacked those seams in place on both sides. If you do decide to do the tacks, you want to make sure that your stitches stay on the upper part of the pouch. You don't want those stitches to go into the bottom, because we need this bottom to stay completely open for now. If I open this up, you can see how it's keeping those seams together. Now, this is what your piece should look like. You should have the folds here on the bottom, and this is what it looks like from the side. Next, you'll take your piece of lining and you want to fold it exactly in half along the longest edge. Make sure that all of your edges are nice and even, and after you fold it, you're going to press that fold into place. Then we're going to take the exterior piece and we want to place this fold right in the center of that bottom. So where we drew this line before, we're going to take this fold and place that fold right along this line right here. And once we have that in place, we're going to take this section and fold it over the lining. And then we're going to clip all of the layers together on both sides. After everything is clipped into place, we're going to sew a seam 1/2 inch away from each of these edges. I've already marked in a seam line here. Again, that's optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But I'm going to finish clipping this and then we can go ahead and sew those seams. Once again, I'll be sewing with a stitch length of 2.5. You do want to back stitch at both ends. And we're using a seam allowance of 1/2 inch. Then once you're done sewing this side, you'll go ahead and sew the other side exactly the same way. After stitching the sides, we want to go ahead and clip these folds. So just do a little clip. Make sure that you don't clip into your stitching. We'll do that on both sides. There's also a little fold here in the center. You want to clip that one as well. Then you're going to go ahead and press these seams open. And then you want to do the same exact thing on this side. Clip all those folds and then press everything open. After pressing open both sides of the seams, we're ready to turn everything right side out. You can start by taking your lining and folding it up over the exterior so that the wrong side of the lining is together with the wrong side of the exterior. Doesn't have to be up perfectly yet. And then you'll separate the exterior just like this, and then just start to turn the whole piece right side out. You want to push these corners here out with your fingers to start. We'll do that on both sides. And then you'll want to go ahead and take a point turner and really get down into those corners. Just push them out until everything looks nice and clean. And with the lining, you want to make sure that the seams are open on both your lining and the exterior. Those seams need to be together. I'm going to put a clip in there temporarily. And then the lining should be even with the top of the exterior. And you'll just go ahead and push everything into place where it needs to be. Make sure that your lining is nice and smooth in there. And make sure that your corners are pushed out nicely. I have the pouch turned right side out, and I've gone ahead and I've clipped the top edge of the exterior to the top edge of the lining. And next we're going to run a basting stitch all around that top edge about 1/8 inch away from the edge. I'm starting that basting stitch with a stitch length of 2.5, and I am sewing with the exterior on the bed of the machine This is the lining side right here on the top. We're just going to sew all the way around about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge and try and keep those edges even. Let's get our zipper ready. You want to take the two ends of the zipper and put them together. You do want to make sure that nothing is twisted here. And we're going to install the zipper pull. Now, some people will use a jig for this. I typically just hold it in my hands, but you can use a jig if you like. You want to take it so that this side is up. So the side that the actual pull is on should be up. And then what I like to do is take that zipper pull, and where you have these two slots, you have two slots on this side, and on this side, on the bottom side, there's just one slot. So you'll take the side that has the two slots, and you're going to hold one end at a 45-degree angle and put it into that slot. But you don't want to put it in too far, just a little bit. Then you'll take the other end and put it into the slot on the opposite side. And then you're going to push. And you're going to feel a click or hear a little bit of a click, which I just did. And once that happens, you can pull the zipper on all the way. Now, mine came out pretty even, but for this project it doesn't really matter if it's even or not because we're just going to trim that even anyway. And then you'll pull it on all the way, just like this. Now I'll just trim that so that it's perfectly even. And next we can go ahead and sew on the zipper tab. Here's my zipper tab, and this is the 3-inch side here. This is the 2.5-inch side. We want to take the 2.5-inch side and sew it with the right side of the fabric to the right side of the zipper. So I'll just put a couple of clips to hold that in place. And we're going to sew this across with a 3/4 of an inch seam. And I'm actually going to go ahead and do that off camera. I have the zipper tab sewn into place with that 3/4 of an inch seam. I only sewed across the zipper tape. After it's sewn into place, you're going to take it and fold it up this way. Then you want to take each edge and fold it in so that the tab becomes the same width as the zipper tape, and then you'll press that into place. Then you'll take the top raw edge here and fold that back. And after you have that folded back, you'll press that fold into place, and then you'll take this side and fold it back over the zipper tape. And you'll press everything. Now you want to make sure that you don't have anything sticking out, that all of the edges are all nice and even on both sides. And then once it looks good, you'll go over to the sewing machine and stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around that tab, forming a box. I'm going to sew around that box with a stitch length of 2.5. We're ready to install the zipper, so the first thing that I want to do is mark the center of that zipper. And to do that, you want to have the zipper closed, and where it closes, right here, that is the center. So we'll just put a little pin in to mark that center for us. Now go ahead and open that zipper up. I'm going to clip this inside the pouch. So where you have that center pinned right there, that is going to go on one of the side seams. and you want your zipper teeth to be up. So I'm pinning the wrong side of the zipper to the right side of the lining. My zipper teeth are facing up. I'm going to put a clip on each side of that pin. And then I'm going to start clipping the zipper in place all the way around. And I'll start clipping the other side. You want the edge of that zipper tape to be even with the top edge of the pouch. Now, when you get to this end here, you want to take that zipper tab and push it down into the pouch like this. And you're going to end up with a 45-degree angle at each end of that zipper. And you want the zipper teeth to be even with your side seam here. And then you'll go ahead and clip the zipper in place with that 45-degree angle. And you should have the same amount of space on each side of the zipper. So here's my side seam right here. My space from here to here should be the same on both sides. And we'll just make sure everything is nice and securely clipped in there. Now we're going to go ahead and sew this in 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper tape all the way around. And I'll use a stitch length of 2.5 again. I'm sewing that zipper in with a 1/4 inch seam, and I am starting on the side that has the zipper tab. So I will back stitch. And you just want to sew completely around. When you get to the end, you'll just sew off the end of that zipper and backstitch. The last thing that we need to do is sew in our binding, and then the pouch will be done. So take your piece of binding and you want to fold those long raw edges into place, and then you'll press that fold down. Then open it up, and you want to bring the two short ends together and sew across those ends with a 1/2 inch seam. So right along here, sew that with a 1/2 inch seam. And I'm going to go do that off camera. After you sew that seam, press it open, and then you're going to fold these raw edges back together again. So this is what your binding should look like now. Then we're going to take the pouch, and we're going to clip the binding to the outside, to the exterior of the pouch. And where you have that seam on the binding, you'll match that up with one of the side seams on the pouch. And then you're going to clip this all the way around. After you have your binding clipped into place, you can go ahead and sew this at the sewing machine. We're going to sew it 1/4 of an inch away from the top edge, and you can follow that same line of stitching that you stitched when you put in your zipper. I'm sewing in the binding with a stitch length of 2.5, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around following that previous line of stitching. Now when you get back to where you started, you do want to stitch all the way across here. And backstitch. Now we need to flip the binding up and turn it towards the inside of the pouch. And you have two options on how you can finish this off. You can either fold it down and hand stitch it in place, or you can stitch it by machine. Now if you want to stitch it by machine, what I like to do is take some double-sided sticky tape, and then I'm going to place the tape right on that folded edge of the binding, all the way around the top edge. This is optional. You don't have to use tape. You can secure it in with clips if you want, but I like the result I get when I actually tape it in. After putting in the tape, I'm just going to take that paper off to reveal the other side of the sticky tape. And then I'm going to take that binding and fold it down over the zipper, and I want to just be covering that line of stitching, just like this. And if you like, you can put in a few clips for some extra insurance. So I'll go ahead and stick this down all the way around, and then we're going to top stitch this in place from the exterior side. I'm going to sew this binding in place with a stitch length of 3.5, and I'm going to let the inner edge of this toe right here ride right along the edge of the binding. Now you can use an edge guide foot for this if you like. It's totally up to you. Just want to make sure that when you sew that the underside here is not getting underneath that presser foot. And I am going to backstitch. And you'll just keep readjusting as you need to and sew all the way around to where you started. Here's the pouch completed with the binding all sewn into place. Well, I do hope that you've enjoyed watching this tutorial, and I hope that you'll give the pouch a try. It's actually a very fun and fast project. I want to thank everybody who has supported me by liking my videos and subscribing to my channel. And if you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you as one, so please like and subscribe.